And we turn our attention now back to the proceedings underway in Glasgow. Ocean-based climate solutions can contribute up to 1/5 of the reductions in greenhouse gas emissions needed to meet the Paris Agreement's 1.5 degrees Celsius temperature goal by 2050. With the vast potential of the ocean to deliver on the climate agenda, the UN Global Compact launched a Blue Road to COP26 in March 2021 to advance action in 4 areas: zero carbon maritime transport, low carbon blue food, offshore renewable energy, and nature-based solutions. This next session will present some of the key outcomes from the Blue Road, including actions and recommendations for businesses and governments to leverage a climate-smart ocean. This is an event not to be missed. So without further ado, let's dive in.
Thank you very much, Diane, and welcome everyone. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, welcome to Glasgow. Welcome to a session on ocean climate stewardship to meet 1.5 degrees. We are excited to be moderating live from the COP26 Blue Zone. And it really has been an interesting week, and we're looking forward to unpacking some of it here today with a focus on the ocean. So to open our session, I am really pleased to introduce His Excellency, Mr. Minister Luhut Panjaitan, who is the Coordinating Minister for Maritime Affairs and Investment from Indonesia, to share some of his reflections on what action Indonesia is taking to harness the potential of the blue economy. Following his remarks, we will hear from our CEO and Executive Director, Sander Ojiambo. Thank you very much.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by expressing my appreciation to the UN Global Compact for convening this important event. I welcome that this forum recognizes the key role of the private sector in developing ocean-based climate solution, more importantly, the shared effort of stakeholders. The multi-stakeholders approach is the most constructive way to generating meaningful and sustainable solutions. Ladies and gentlemen, an archipelago of over 17,000 islands located between the Pacific and the Indian Oceans, and the founder of founder of the archipelagic island states with the highest marine biodiversity on Earth, we recognize that the ocean climate stewardship is the tremendous important. Indonesia is natural capital superpower with the largest shares of the coral triangle that account of 75% of global stony corals biodiversity and majority of reef fish species. Indonesia has one of the longest coastline, and its mangroves comprise some 80 species, accounting for almost 1/4 of the world's mangroves. Also own the largest and diverse of seagrass ecosystem. These valuable assets must be an important part of building a credible path to zero emissions. I welcome all stakeholders to work with us on this ambition, whether you are business leaders, civil society leaders, or from national or multilateral authorities. Ladies and gentlemen, SDG 14 on ocean has many elements, as do ocean-based climate solution, low carbon blue food, harnessing offshore renewable energy, zero emission maritime transport, and nature-based solution focusing on seaweed art. I understand some of the areas of focus of this global compact endeavor. As a country, we need to make our contribution to global efforts on planetary health, mitigate the harmful impact of climate change on our communities, especially coastal communities, and provide sustainable livelihoods for those communities, especially during post-COVID-19 pandemic. Let me share with you 2 examples of how we are trying to accomplish that goals. The first is a program of Indonesian Coral Reef Garden that has been launching launched during IMF World Bank annual meeting 2018, a coral reef restoration program designed to combine among research innovation, community empowerment, and economic creative as the main pillars. In fact, we already restored about 743,000 meter square of our coral reef in Bali, alone during COVID-19 pandemic under National Economic Recovery Program. This number is already the largest restoration action of coral reef at the moment, and the government of Indonesia will duplicate this program in 10 locations around Indonesia in 2022 as our contribution to Paris Agreement and SDGs 14 goals. Under the support of Ocean MDTF, we are applying sustainable finance through payment for ecosystem services in our ICRG's side. The second is the Blue Halo S platform, launched at COP26 with our Fishery Minister Trenggono, share Indonesian plans to launch innovative commercial concession to support conservation of marine ecosystem, mangrove restoration, and smallholders infrastructure to value create for coastal communities. A little over a decade ago, an unprecedented coalition of partners began what has become one of the most ambitious and effective marine conservation programs in the world. The Birds Head Seascape initiative works to protect and manage the extraordinary value of over 3.6 million hectares marine protected areas in West Papua province. We are now taking the next step in innovative ecosystem financing through the Blue Halo S initiative. This initiative involving blending finance investment with marine protected areas to achieve sustainable fisheries, blue carbon, and ocean conservative goal. We are underway on our plan to replant 600,000 hectares of mangroves and degraded coastline by 2024, including our new capital in Kalimantan that aims to be a green and blue capital. Blue Halo S will incentivize investment into MPA, coral reef, and mangroves restoration management. Ladies and gentlemen, these efforts call for step-up collaboration across all stakeholders. I would like to invite you to join us in this exciting endeavor that it is so important for the sustainable future of our oceans, communities, and planetary health for the world. We have many actions underway, including the recent law and decree that support a carbon tax and carbon pricing. We will embark on our NCCC carbon market as well as other ocean issues such as sustainable fisheries and Center for Excellence for Coral Reef Conservation platform to be launched around the G20 in Bali 2022. We look to set up the THK Center for Future Knowledge and a multilateral global blended finance and innovation institute in Bali to support the innovative agenda around technology and finance for the SDGs. As a G20 chair, we hope that we can build on COP26 and bring about concerted action on people and wish G20 to give emerging economies and developing countries global platform with blended climate finance and carbon market as well as sustainable blue economy. Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our heart and hands together and find solutions for our next generation, our children and our grandchildren. Thank you for your attention.
Guests. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this session on ocean climate stewardship to meet 1.5 degrees. With the input of more than 100 stakeholders worldwide, the Blue Road to COP has identified key recommendations and actions for businesses and governments to harness the full potential of the ocean to deliver on a 1.5 degree future. In the lead up to this milestone conference, initiatives such as the Blue Road have helped amplify the call for greater awareness and implementation of ocean-based climate solutions. This session will present some of the key outcomes from the Blue Road, including recommended actions for businesses and governments. The UN Global Compact Blueprint for a Climate-Smart Ocean to meet 1.5 degrees outlines clear steps to advance ocean-based climate solutions in 4 areas. And these are zero-carbon maritime transport, low-carbon blue food, offshore renewable energy, and nature-based solutions. Across all of these ocean-based solutions, the blueprint also identifies overarching enablers to accelerate progress. We must also ensure a just transition to the net zero ocean economy that leaves no one behind. This objective is embedded in the Paris Agreement, which references the imperatives of a just transition of the workforce and the creation of decent work and quality jobs. Inclusive dialogue and stakeholder engagement must be at the core of a just transition in order to create and safeguard decent green jobs. From a global perspective, opportunities must be secured for developed and developing countries alike through knowledge and technology transfer. Accessibility of job opportunities across all populations and communities must be ensured through new skills development. Ocean industries can be a key future job provider and are therefore very well placed to take a leadership role in incorporating a human-centered approach. The demand for offshore renewable energy jobs alone is expected to triple by the year 2030. The UN Global Compact publication entitled Charting a 1.5 degree Trajectory for Maritime Transport also highlights the need to approach the decarbonization of shipping through the lens of a just transition in order to mitigate potential negative social impacts and enable a more equitable future for the industry. Another key lever to decarbonize and achieve a net zero ocean economy will be undoubtedly scaling private, public, and blended blue finance. Leveraging blue finance aligned with global standards through blue bonds, for example, can support ambitious corporate action. In addition, such investment mechanisms can enable the development of ocean management plans and resilient coastal infrastructure. Fortunately, the blue economy is rising on investors' agendas. Further expanding climate-nature investment to include more ocean-based solutions can help to close the current investment gap to meet the 2030 agenda and a net zero resilient future. In the fight against climate change, ocean-based solutions possess unique potential as they offer opportunities for both adaptation and mitigation. The ocean can be our greatest ally in addressing the twin crises of biodiversity loss and climate change, and therefore present a climate-smart approach to the ocean, and this is increasingly vital. Through our newly launched Ocean Stewardship Coalition, the UN Global Compact will continue our blue road towards COP27 and beyond to further strengthen the case for ocean climate action. The Ocean Stewardship Coalition will scale the collective global impact of sustainable ocean business by mobilizing its network of leading companies, NGOs, UN partners, academic institutions, with the support of our Global Compact local networks for country-level action. We look forward to continued collaboration with you on these important aims. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sander, for those inspiring remarks, really setting the scene for our session today on ocean climate stewardship. And thank you to His Excellency Minister Luhut Panjaitan for these important and stage-setting remarks on Indonesia's blue economy. So let me introduce myself. I'm Martha, and I'm currently managing the UN Global Compact Ocean Stewardship Coalition. Today, we'll be further exploring ocean climate action in 3 short panels, hearing from 6 experts covering a variety of ocean-related sectors and industries. But before we go on to that, I'm delighted to introduce my co-moderator and good colleague, Ignace Beguin, who has been working with the UN High-Level Climate Action Champions for COP26, leading their work on ocean and coastal zones. So Ignace, I'd like to ask you very quickly to give us some of your 3 key takeaways from how the ocean is being addressed at COP.
Well, thank you, Marta, and welcome, everybody. I think at COP26, nature really took the center stage. We finally got to a point where we look at the climate crisis from the lens of nature. Businesses and governments to follow this path have to reconcile with nature and work with it rather than exploiting it. Science is clear, we are reaching tipping points and we need to act now if we want to secure the future of humanity. My second takeaway is that in Glasgow, we made the ocean, the largest biome on Earth, our ally. There is a strong momentum by governments and non-state actors to take the ocean climate nexus to the next level. Leading countries like the US, Chile, Norway, Fiji, for instance, are pushing for a strong political outcome on the ocean in Glasgow. For non-state actors, we launched the Ocean for Climate Declaration, which has already been signed by 120 organizations from UN, science, business, and governments, calling for much more bolder action on ocean. Finally, my third takeaway, and this is what we will hear today, is that just and equitable transition is a prerequisite for a successful transition. We need to build the trust and the confidence with workers, communities, and the people to get this social acceptability. If we accelerate technology without onboarding people and giving them the benefits, this will never work. So to conclude, we need to go fast, work with nature, and make sure that this transition is benefiting all. Certainly not an easy task, but we will hear today from business leaders who will certainly give us great hopes.
Thank you so much, Ignace. And that is a fantastic bridge to our first panel of three. So I'm just going to move my camera slightly because we're actually joined live here by one of our panelists, which is really exciting. And by doing this, I'd also like to welcome Miss Eugenia Barroca, who is the Youth Regional Representative for Sustainable Ocean Alliance, on screen. There she is, fantastic. And I'm joined here today by Miss Kate Wallace-Lockhart, who is the Head of Social Impact at SSE, which is a renewable electricity company. So great to have you both with us. Thank you so much, and great to be here live. So Ignace and Sander just both outlined the imperative of a just transition. And I'd like to ask you, first of all, Kate, firstly, what does a just transition mean to you? And also, what are you concretely doing at SSE to address it?
Thank you. Brilliant. Thanks very much, Martha. I hope to everyone on the call today. It's great to join you from Glasgow. So for those that don't know SSE, we're building more renewable energy generation offshore than any other company in the world, including the world's largest offshore wind farm off the coast of northeast England. So the best way that I've heard the just transition described is that it's the glue that holds together net zero and social justice. So essentially it's all about securing this public legitimacy for getting to net zero by thinking about the impacts that net zero will have on people in the widest sense. So it's not just about workers, it's about workers, communities and consumers as well. And what we need to do is think about all of these climate goods, so things like new jobs, access to new technologies, alongside the climate bads, so things like who will pay for the transition and what happens to people in higher carbon jobs. And essentially what the just transition is trying to do is to balance these in the fairest possible way. Now, at SSE, we published what we believe is the world's first business strategy for a just transition last November, and it outlines 20 principles that can help us to manage these difficult trade-offs and think about our decision-making in the fairest way for people. But your question is about actions, right? So principles are one thing, but actions are the most important thing, and that's certainly the message that's coming out of Glasgow. So over the last year, what we've done at SSE is to engage a really wide range of different stakeholders on the just transition. So everyone from our trade union partners, academics, investors, our employees. We carried out quite extensive primary research with our employees that have made the move from high to low carbon careers, but also, oil and gas majors and our suppliers too. So a wide range of different stakeholders. And that led us to publishing a second report, which I have a physical copy of here today. And that report really focuses on actions that we can take to secure a just transition. So what we've done is we've outlined 20 commitments for SSE, 10 recommendations for industry and 10 recommendations for government that can help specifically to support workers moving from high to low carbon careers. And why we chose workers in the first instance was because we know there's such a strong story to tell. So at SSE, we have surveyed our 10,000 employees, and what we found is that 1 in 5 have moved from high carbon roles into low carbon careers with SSE, many of whom come from the North Sea and oil and gas jobs there. And essentially these commitments, I won't go through them all, they're on our website, but it's things like, practical actions that companies can take, things like, not asking for industry-specific requirements within your job adverts unless it's actually required, and calling out that you'll accept people from different sectors to move in. It's about engineering conversion courses, really doing everything that we can to build competitive local supply chains in the places near assets. So we're supporting jobs and communities there. And really, it's all about collaboration, because, if we think about all these organisations that we've engaged with, then this consensus that's growing around just transition is really something quite special that we need to focus on.
Thank you so much, Kate. I really like this description of being the glue between net zero and social justice. That's really great. And obviously moving from principles to action is really important. So looking forward to reading that report. Thank you for sharing that. So turning over to you, Eugenia, and just to outline that the Sustainable Ocean Line, this is a global network of youth that you are part of, which is really exciting. So I'd like to ask a similar question. So what does a just transition mean to you? How can we better involve young people? And what are some kind of concrete tools that you're using as an alliance to engage with this generation?
First of all, thank you very much for the honor of being here. And for me, a just transition should be based in an interdisciplinary approach, where scientific knowledge is the starting point for this decision and making processes, and together with this social reality that we need to respect and involve everyone. So from that point, I believe it's essential to focus on the communication between the different sectors of our society, because the truth is that we need all these areas of action and everyone in this role to be cooperating towards a sustainable and healthy blue planet. I think it's crucial to increase the dialogue between companies and research centers in order to have businesses managed by science. Like, for example, that the raw materials used are from a sustainable and ecological sources. Ideally, what has been until now called as waste, and that in the present, in the near future, we stop having that word, and that everything that we use is reintegrated, exactly just how nature does with all the matter. So I think that governments and decision makers also have the responsibility to funding and finance the science knowledge as the base, but also then to transfer this knowledge to the ocean literacy and education to their communities, but focusing a lot on educating the stakeholders and the industry representatives about these current climate challenges and the respective solutions, and create also incentives for companies that are already being sustainable and carbon neutral in bigger incentives for activities that are actively restoring and conserving ecosystems. And also creating the transition incentives for business that are now with high impact, and create incentives for them to transit and be green and without it being sustainable. And regarding Sustainable Ocean Lines community, I believe that in terms of youth, we spend daily. I speak with dozens of youth every week, and the truth is that they are really active, and we try through our global community to empower these young people to embrace their leadership skills through resources like the Ocean Solutions microgrants that give them resources to apply innovative ocean solutions. And through this sense of community of being together globally in more than 165 countries, but being aligned with the same mission. And for example, now we just wrote different youth from the world, wrote the Global Blue New Deal. That is our youth perspective and our propose for the focus that we should have to the management in the next decisions. But I think a big challenge that we should focus on youth to bring it actively to this change is needed is that a lot of these youth are working hard and actively, but on a volunteer basis. So I believe that we need to integrate the ecosystems conservation and restoration, like being direct or indirect activities, as the main activities for our economy, and align our monetary values with the natural values, the ones that really give us all the support to life. And education and training should be much more interdisciplinary. Companies and governments should be talking directly with younger generation, sharing their challenges, possible solutions, in order to incentivize innovative solutions to be developed. And definitely more job opportunities and project resources should be developed to use this creative and innovative energy that young people can bring to our world. Change towards a sustainable future can be much accelerated if it's done by taking into account business and enterprise goals. If the rising generation can understand where the intersection of sustainability goals and business goals occur, the motivations for net zero and transformational change can become intrinsic on the enterprise and industrial sectors. I speak for myself now as a part of this generation that I believe that the biggest change needed now is to improve our communication in order to sit at the table with all the parties from our society, just exactly how COP26 aims and is doing right now, and that together we can find this best management for our common home. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Eugenia. That was really inspiring. Thank you so much, Eugenia. And I think, having a seat at the table is so important. And also thank you so much for this global Blue New Deal. We've been reading it a lot and we think it's great. So without further ado, thank you so much for my two panelists for this first session. And I'm now going to move my screen and pass over to my colleague, Ignace, who will be taking over and moderating our second panel for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Marta. Thank you. So next we will discuss how we can bridge climate mitigation action with resilience in nature. To discuss this issue, I'm joined by Ms. Claire Marta from CMA-CGM, and Claire, you are the Vice President for Sustainability, and Mr. Nuno Diaz-Cosme from Grupo Nueva Pescanova, and you are the Chief Sustainability Officer. Claire, first of all, to you, CMA-CGM is taking a holistic approach to the joint biodiversity and climate crisis. In addition to setting science-based targets, you are also working to protecting marine biodiversity. Can you tell us more why this is relevant to your business and share with us and the audience some lessons learned?
Yeah, thank you very much, Ines, and good afternoon to all of you. It is true that CMA-CGM is really committed and very recently to the race to zero. It is at the core of our environmental strategy. We are, as you know, operating vessels on the oceans. We are very much attached to the oceans as an ecosystem in which we operate our vessels, so that we have to protect. In this environmental strategy, we have those two legs to run this race. The first one is obviously reducing our carbon footprint and go to net zero by 2050. This is not an easy task when you are operating such large container ships, container vessels. We work on reducing the impact of our assets, of the energy, and of our operations. And this is by working on the three aspects that we can be efficient. Then on the second big task is about biodiversity, marine, but also not only marine, because working on the ground biodiversity helps also the marine biodiversity to be protected. What we have to do in this respect, first of all, understanding and measuring our impact, because as long as you don't measure what are your impact on an ecosystem, it's very difficult to act. So first of all, measuring. For this, we rely on third party, like a label, which is Green Marine Europe from the Surfrider Foundation. Why? Because they have a high level of knowledge on these topics, and they can orient us on the key topics that we must address, like submarine noise, like the pollutions, like the ballast water, working on the endangered species. So thanks to this third party, we are able to really consider the entire panel of actions that we must take care of. And then when we have a good knowledge of this, a kind of what we can call a biodiversity footprint, what is it, on the ocean around the world, in this case, we can start to act. And to act in an efficient way, a way that will provide results. Because we are, as business people and business leaders, we are very much, pragmatic and result-oriented. So we have set a kind of roadmap to achieve zero marine pollution with a lot of very concrete tools, technologies, and also behaviors of our people at sea. A second example I can give is also protecting the marine mammals, the cetacean, by cooperating with the scientific community in different areas in the world, because again, we have to be able to detect the ways that those cetaceans are taking across the seas across the world, and then making sure that in the way our captains are operating the vessels, we will let them know when they have to reduce the speed in certain areas to make sure that there will be no collision. Another example, which was a strong commitment from the group taken by our chairman and CEO, Rodolphe Saadé, was to avoid, to forbid taking the Northern Sea route. You know, this Northern Sea route, which is crossing a very fragile ecosystem of the Arctic region. And we have committed to never use these routes. This is an example to showcase that we are able to make decisions which have an impact on our operations, because we consider that as willing to be a leader in these environmental topics, we need to act very concretely and very efficiently. Then the other aspect is when you have measure and reduce your impact, then we consider our duty is also to protect, preserve, and even more to regenerate the nature, because the more we will have, I will say, sane, healthy marine ecosystem, the more we will be able to capture the CO2 which is in the atmosphere. This is why we have a couple of programs. And again, I repeat myself, but it's always in partnerships with scientists, because they are the knowledgeable people, or with NGOs, because they are able to really pinpoint the issues on which we have to work. So to give a couple of examples, we work on the preserved marine sensitive ecosystem with specific actions. For instance, in the Mediterranean Sea at the Parc des Calanques close to Marseille, because it was where the group was born, in the south of France, for those who don't know where Marseille is. But we have also restoration of natural ecosystem. The Ministry of Indonesia mentioned the Reef recovery rehabilitation of our program. We are part of a couple of programs around the world, in Australia, in the Philippines, in Caribbean Sea, in Seychelles, etc. And last but not least, we are also the duty to fight against the illegal trafficking of protected species that can be transported in our containers without us to know most of the time. So we have to find, thanks to science and to artificial intelligence or deep learning, to better understand where the traffic can happen, how we can detect if there are endangered species trafficked, and then make sure that we have the right procedures to act together with the authorities to reduce this. So this is how, in a nutshell, how we are trying to do our best to really be active on biodiversity, and we really pledge to embark the entire sector into this process.
Thank you so much, Claire. And I know all of this, thank you for your leadership, and all of this was calling for collaboration in the industry and across sectors. And today in Glasgow, there is some very significant amendments for joint work with governments and companies to really deliver on this decarbonization journey and reducing greenhouse gas emission. Now, Nuno, your company is part of the solution. You are able to provide low carbon source of protein, but you still have to decarbonize across COPs 1, 2, and 3. Can you tell us how you are doing it?
Yeah, thank you, Ines. Good afternoon to all of you, and nice to see you, Martha. I would like to start by thanking the invitation to join this session today. As participant members of the Global Compact Initiative, we would like to salute the initiative pushing the sustainability commitments worldwide. Outstanding job, indeed. Let me start by sharing a bit of perspective. The Nueva Pesca Nova is a Spanish multinational group specialized in fishing, aquaculture, farming, processing, and commercialization of seafood products. We employ a bit more than 10,000 people in 19 countries, and we are full vertically integrated. This means that we control the value chain from source to sale. After working for 60 years by now, we own and operate a 62 vessel fleet, and we farm in some 7,000 hectares of aquaculture farms. Then we have 17 processing plants in 10 countries, and our products are sold in 80 countries in 5 continents. This means complexity. And the bigger you are, the more responsible you must be. So in that sense, we recognize that our activity or the activity of our companies throughout the value chain entails the emission of greenhouse gases, the consumption of a significant amount of energy, and the use of refrigerant gases for freezing and cold storage of our products for their transportation and distribution. So we believe it is our duty to quantify the environmental footprint and to adopt responsible solutions to be more efficient. And this includes helping our partner communities to be more resilient. As part of our decarbonization strategy, we are focusing on the efficiency of the energy conversion and consumption processes, industrial reconversion towards less polluting fuels, and switching, of course, to renewable energy sources. With this in mind, we have set out a net zero carbon target for 2040 based on a 50-50 share of reduction and compensation commitment. And this means, in practice, means reducing our emissions by 3% annually, and which is quite ambitious. And this means a 30% reduction by 2030 and 50% by 2040. And the plan is to first avoid, then mitigate, and then compensate any residual emission. We have built new fishing vessels to improve energy efficiency and fishing efficiency as well, something like improvements of 30 to 40%. And our photovoltaic production solar power generated worldwide in our companies totals already 12 gigawatts hour annually, and we'll up to 15 next year. And this means 30% of renewables sourced in 2020, and we have agreements in Spain for 60% renewable energy. And we also collaborate a lot on these strategic alliances to collaborate in promoting ocean sustainability, seafood traceability, fighting IUU, among others, because we like to participate and we enjoy participating in the UN Global Compact initiatives. We embed the spirit of the sustainable ocean business by following the Ocean Stewardship 2030 roadmap, and we are focusing on sustainable seafood, and we in particular are working actively with implementing full digital seafood traceability with blockchain under the Global Dialogue for Seafood Traceability, the GDST standard. And this means promoting seafood sustainability, legality, and transparency. And we're also involved in the TFO task force for the SDGs, working towards a future sustainability-linked bonds. And of course, we are adopting the 9 principles for the sustainable ocean principles in our governance tools in our practice. I'd like to quote Ignace early on when you mentioned work with nature, and this is quite what we do. For instance, I have a few notes here just to share with you that we've deployed several projects. I'm not going through all the projects, but focusing on environmental protection, biodiversity and conservation, reforestation, and especially some on securing ecosystem services we depend on. This is very important to secure provisioning and regulating services the ecosystem is offering us. For instance, we see a huge potential for the mangrove ecosystem as a carbon sink. This is the blue carbon, and we are running annual campaigns to plant mangrove in Ecuador, Nicaragua, and Guatemala, and improving our understanding and our knowledge about the biodiversity impacts of our activity and trying to mitigate all we can. We work to reduce bycatch volumes, of course, because we are a fishing company, and working on protecting and mitigating interactions with marine birds and marine mammals, reducing fishing gear improving and working on fishing gear traceability to mitigate the global ghost fishing problem, and run plant nurseries to support our effort into reforestation program and working in biodiversity projects with sea turtles and iguanas, for instance. So it's a lot of work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nuno. And we've heard about two leaders who are able to tackle both the climate and the biodiversity crisis at the same time. But this needs finance to support this transition. So that's the next panel that Marta will moderate.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you so much, Claire. That was really interesting. So we're moving on to our third and final panel now, looking, as Ignace mentioned, all around blue finance. And as Sandra mentioned in her opening remarks, to finance ocean climate solutions, we really need significant capital, both from private, public, and blended finance mechanisms. So our panelists for this segment will be Adrien Vincent, who is the lead for Seaweed for Europe, who have just launched an exciting memo on the case for investing in seaweed. And we have Mr. Gerhard, who is the CEO of Kongsberg Gruppen, which is a company which touches upon a number of ocean climate and solutions. So I'd like to first turn to you, Adrien, and ask you if you could maybe outline a little bit, how can we accelerate blue finance, focusing on 1 or 2 ocean climate solutions?
Thank you so much, Martha, and it's a pleasure to be here with you. And let me take this opportunity to congratulate the UN Global Compact for having championed the blue agenda so well during the whole COP, and showing that the ocean is not only a victim of climate change, but can be a source of solutions as well. Maybe let me walk you through 2 concrete examples of projects I'm working on how we are trying to mobilize capital towards these sustainable ocean-based solutions. The first one is on mitigation. So we launched a year and a half ago a coalition called Seaweed for Europe, with the aim to accelerate the development and the scale-up of a sustainable seaweed industry in Europe. So as of today, we are gathering around 100 members from across the value chain, investment world, civil society, and NGOs. And all together, we work on a number of barriers that today are preventing Europe from unleashing the full potential of seaweed. And when I say full potential of seaweed, the amazing thing about this resource is that on one hand, it can be a source of a lot of amazing low carbon products, from food to feed to fertilizers, bioplastics, textiles, and so on. And at the same time, growing seaweed is good for the environment and for ocean health. But today, one of the key barriers is that we need to channel more financing and more capital into the industry to support research, to support science, to support seed and growth funding for promising innovative startups and SMEs, as well as debt and equity financing to scale up operations and build the required farms and processing facilities. So the first element to attract this capital is about raising awareness, so making sure that investors and financiers have access to the right information and are aware of the potential of seaweed. And so this is why we have developed and released a couple of weeks ago this investor memo to really bring a maximum of transparency and information for investors about what does the deal flow and pipeline of European seaweed companies looks like. And we have shown that the number of those companies has tripled over the past 10 years. We have also looked at their TRL level, which products they're working on, as well as the amounts of investment that have flowed into the industry in the past decade. And we were amazed to see that already we are talking about a multiplication of 24 between the amounts invested in seaweed companies 10 years ago and today. So we are on the good trajectory, but we need now to involve more of these players. The second example I wanted to mention is more about adaptation. So I'm also working with the Global Fund for Coral Reef, which is a $625 million fund, blended fund, and the first of its kind focusing on SDG 14. And I think it's a really good example of how we can mobilize more money and accelerate financing to the ocean space by better leveraging public money. Because today, a lot of the public money is used only through one-off grants or purely research without in mind the leveraging of private capital. And so this is where this fund is a revolution, where you have one window within the fund which aims to spend $125 million into grants that will be focusing on generating an investable pipeline, in de-risking the environment for the private investors, and also in providing the right support of capacity building and science, so then the private investors can deploy their capital. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Antonin. Sorry for having to cut you off there. That was really exciting. Great to hear about the Coral Reef Fund. So I'd now like to pass over to you, Ger, to have your reflections on how we can accelerate blue finance, focusing on one or two ocean climate solutions. Over to you, Ger.
Yes, good afternoon to you all, and thank you for having me on this panel. As a global technology provider from the deep sea to the outer space, Kongsberg is in the forefront. We today provide technology for detecting illegal fishery and deforestation. We have technology for zero-emission maritime transport, and we are in the forefront of technology for oceanic research. And we are also an active solution provider on the offshore wind. So today in our business strategy, including the acquisition, there are no initiatives even being considered if they are not do not have a clear sustainability plan. So to the question raised, there is no doubt in my mind that the biggest and by far most important catalyst that can make a change, the change that we actually need globally, is the flow of capital. The capital markets are one of the most well-proven and efficient global system we have. The major issue isn't availability of the capital. There is not enough capital, both public and private. And public capital has its roles in being available where there is no funding functioning private market, hence, for instance, for the research and development. So in my opinion, we need more flow of the private capital. And I think here the two most important factors to push this in a green direction are the following. We need a global climate legislation that creates a push-pull effect for the green technology development. This legislation has to be specific as to when they are introduced and have the trust of the capital market. I think here the EU taxonomy and the blue investment bond initiatives are good examples of common categorizing and legislation. My second point is that we need more efficient allocation of the capital to the green technology investment. Both institutionally and private investors that too and already are reallocating medium and long-term investment, green investment. This has entailed that in the last 2-3 years, we have seen a greenium in the capital market. Kongsberg has and will continue to put a lot of efforts into our sustainability and business strategy. But from a business perspective, we wish and need to see clearer financial effects of this work in terms of greenium that can be utilized for investment in technology development. That means that the improved margin in green investment need to be allocated to the industrial user who puts the capital in to work. So by that, I say thank you.
Thank you so much, Ger. Just to conclude very quickly, now we have the frameworks to decarbonize in line with science. We've just said from here that the technology is here. We know how finance can be scaled up. So I think let's do, and deliver on the climate we have set by 2030 and for the SDGs, and the ocean is full of solutions. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Marta, and see you soon.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to Inyas, Marta, Sanda, and all the panelists.